7 things nobody tells you about fat loss. So as a little bit of background, I have been into the gym and fitness for the past 6-7 years, and in that time I have gained muscle, I've lost fat, I've gone through phases of being in a calorie deficit, being in a calorie surplus, being around maintenance for the majority of the time, and I wanted to share my 7 things I really wish I knew about fat loss. As a bit of background, so like this past kind of year, I started getting into more hybrid style training and I ran my first marathon this year, which I absolutely loved, but I feel like my lifting side of like strength training took a kind of backseat, which I wouldn't expect any less, because as my distances crept up with my runs and they were taking a real forefront, I was finding it hard to continually progressively overload. So after my marathon, I've committed to focusing more on my strength training and getting stronger again, focusing on certain imbalances and whatnot. And this is the first time I have committed to doing a calorie deficit, which I haven't done properly in years. Like I'd say I've been around maintenance with small stages of doing a calorie deficit, but not really consistently this past few years, because I've had so much going on in my personal life. I've moved countries and been here, there and everywhere, and it's just not been like a top priority for me. So it's actually been really nice over this past 7 weeks. I've been so fine-tuned with my nutrition, with my workouts, following a structured program, and I wanted to share what has truly helped me the most, and from my experience, what has made the most difference when trying to lose fat. Okay, first thing nobody tells you about fat loss is tracking your macros accurately. Now hear me out, because I know you're already thinking, Liv, I already track my macros and I've done for years. I know how to scan something into MyFitnessPal. What are you talking about? Listen, so are you tracking the cooked weight? Are you air frying, say, chicken or beef mince, and you're weighing out the cooked weight? It's going to be totally different to the raw weight. So 150 grams of raw beef mince will be very different to 150 grams of cooked beef mince, if this makes sense. You can input it on MyFitnessPal as cooked weight, but are you just scanning like the raw weight, if that makes sense? It isn't complicated, but I know that might sound a little bit like, what did you just say? Making sure when you are scanning something, like you're measuring the raw weight beforehand, is a lot more accurate than the cooked weight. Obviously there's times when that's not going to be realistic, but as much as possible for consistency, measuring out the raw weight of things like your mince, of things like your chicken, your lean meats, and the same for sweet potato. It's going to be totally different to, say, if you fry something, and say if you air fry something, or say if you roast something, as soon as you've like cooked and altered that, it's going to change its weight. This can be a real kind of make or break when you are trying to lose fat, because it can just mean that you can be feeling like, oh my god, I'm tracking everything, but I'm not either losing fat, and then you start questioning everything else, because you're thinking, are my hormones not regulated? Have I got insulin resistance? And going down all these rabbit holes, when it could just be a simple fix of just not accurately tracking. And also things like you could be eyeballing stuff. Say if you have tracked for a while, you're kind of like just loosely measuring, or you're only tracking, say, your breakfast, and then lunch and dinner you're just kind of guesstimating. You're not amounting for the Starbucks or for the Costa that you had out. Are you just tracking your calories? So say you've set your macros in your MyFitnessPal and you're just focused on calories. It's much more beneficial to actually be focused on your macros. So making sure each day you check in, is in your MyFitnessPal or whatever you're using to track your macros, and checking that you're hitting your protein target, your carb target. Do you find that you're only hitting your carb target and you're kind of just letting your protein kind of just go to miss? I just want to remind you, like, calories will determine your body, your scale weight, but macros will determine how your body looks, and you're going to feel totally different if you're hitting your protein targets to, say, just your carb targets. Like, you'll feel more energized, fuller, appear visually leaner, and it's just super important to look at that. And it's not something that you have to do every day. Like, maybe it's just a couple of days where you're like, right, I'm going to make sure I'm hitting every single target, your protein, carbs and fats, and then you kind of get into a habit and you can feel it in your body that you're, like you're on it with each macronutrient. Second one is following a structured program and consistently doing the same movements week in, week out. I want you to get almost bored with your program, because that way you can actually give yourself chance to get stronger in certain exercises. Like, say if you're doing your RDLs and then the next week you're doing a back squat, and then the following week you're doing a deadlift, and then you're doing a hip thrust. Like, there's no consistency, and it's going to be really hard to track if you're actually getting stronger, if you're being able to get another rep range. Like, progressive overload isn't about being able to add on 10 kg onto each exercise each week. Like, even if it's 1 kg, or even if it's one more rep that you can get out, that is progressive overload. Or if you can just control that weight that you were lifting the previous week with better form, better control, like that is progressive overload and improving on your form. Like, I've tried doing the crazy random workouts for years, but you just don't see the results. You don't really feel like you're performing any better, and you can't really track anything. So it's hard to stay motivated over time, which is why it's so important to have a structured program, and exactly also why I'm really enjoying the current leaner and faster program in my Flowness Club, which the girlies are halfway through the challenge, and you are welcome to join anytime. You have 30 days that you can start whenever suits you and your lifestyle best. And this is a place where I provide you with a structured hybrid program that you can tailor to your lifestyle. Some other benefits as well with following a program that I love is just having that accountability, and you know what you're doing. Like, you can actually get excited about your workouts because you can feel your progress, and it just prevents that plateau as well in your strength. And then using other apps, ones like Heavy Set, and ways to just track your weight so that you're not kind of relying on your brain like, wait, did I lat pull down 50 kg last week? You can just check your phone and you can see what weight you were lifting, and you're like, right, I'm going to aim for an extra rep, or I'm going to aim to add on 2 kg, that kind of thing, that you can see clearly rather than you're just guessing, because it's too much to remember like what you were precisely lifting in every single exercise, and there's no doubt you're just going to have some errors along the line. So I absolutely love having that for accountability. Third one around macros is consistently hitting your macros. So this is another thing, like if you're under eating, that is to a detriment usually when it comes to a fat loss phase, because no doubt, say that day you might have under eaten your calories, say 400 calories, should we say, but then the following days you're going to be hungrier because you've not hit those calories. That makes sense. So there's more chance of you overeating on the next few days. So that is why it's super important to make sure you're hitting your calories, like you're not under eating, because sometimes I've had that with clients. I've also been there myself, where I'm like, oh well, I'm in a calorie deficit, maybe it's a benefit if I'm like, I'm not actually that hungry, so I'm going to eat 400 calories less, and then it just ends up like overgoing into the next days, because you will feel hungrier in the following days because your body just wants to achieve like a homeostasis. So that is important to make sure you're hitting your macros on a daily basis, and also staying consistent, because I know it's super common. Say if you haven't tracked your macros before, you're not that familiar, and then you get set your macros and you're like, oh my god, that is so much food, and the first few days you'll be like, I feel like I'm eating like all the time, like how am I supposed to lose weight on this? Trust the process. Trust the process. I also had this exact thought process like when I upped my calories. So I had, say, my calorie deficit calories that I'd always gone back to for years. Like I just thought it was, say as an example, like I thought my calorie deficit was 1500, and that was just what I thought. I could never eat above that in order to lose weight, when actually I added on 200 calories and I actually managed to lose weight because they were far too low, and I just couldn't maintain my lifestyle. Like, especially if you're more active as well, there's a lot of considerations into that, and it can be easy to start overcomplicating things. Whilst we're on this as well, of course there will be days that you don't consistently hit your macros, and that is totally normal and fine. Like, we're not robots, and life comes up. There's going to be days that you go over your macros, but just having that flexibility as well to know like, oh, I can maybe add in an extra meal, or say if you've, just having that flexibility around your meals will definitely help with overcoming that kind of struggle of not hitting your targets. Like, you could just maybe add in a little extra protein the next day if you didn't quite hit your protein target, and just looking at it more on like a week basis rather than a day basis, and being really stuck on like, oh my god, I haven't managed to hit my macros today. Like, you can just change throughout the week and try and get certain things up if you haven't quite matched your protein target. Other practical tips which I love for hitting your macros is of course meal prepping and batch cooking things like your protein sources, and just having them readily available. It just makes life a lot easier, and you're not having to just constantly rely on like your thinking brain to be like, right, where am I gonna, have I got X, Y, Z in? And of course doing a weekly scheduled food shop, or having a day that you go and get all your food shop in, just makes such a difference. Something so small that goes a long way and just saves a lot of that brain space. Whilst we're on flexibility too, just not being too hard on yourself, and especially if you eat out, like just aiming to get your protein in. So like focusing on like, right, what protein can I get in? Like if I eat out, I'll try and aim to like get a steak or some sort of lean meat, and then having my veggies and some sort of carb sauce that's cooked in a little bit less oil. With your nutrition, consistency is just the most important thing, not perfection. Consistency over perfection always. Fourth thing is actually not running for fat loss. This is a big point, misconception that running is a really good fat loss tool, and I definitely say like things like sprints and shorter distance running can be a great fat loss tool, but long distance running and doing a lot of cardio is nowhere near as beneficial as doing strength training for fat loss, because what happens is running a lot of distances, if you haven't got your nutrition in check, you can cause a lot of muscle loss, and of course the less muscle you have, the slower that your metabolism is. So there's a lot that kind of goes into that. Distance running of course increases hunger as well, because your output's much higher, which can lead overeating and finding it hard to keep in a calorie deficit. And also I would never recommend, say if you have a marathon training or even a half marathon training program, it would not be a good idea to try and be in a calorie deficit for that. It would just really affect your performance. You really need that food for fuel, and I just don't think it would be beneficial at all. So when you consistently run long distance, your body naturally adapts to preserve more fat for fuel, because it's thinking, right, if she's going to be running 20 kilometers today, then it's just a mechanism to ensure that you have enough energy for prolonged activity. Our bodies tend to seek a state of homeostasis. So I would definitely say with fat loss, you would be much better replacing long distance running with strength training and HIIT, which are much more effective for fat loss and also preserving muscle. Fifth thing is resting more. So I've been there, and I no doubt at some point you probably have as well, thinking that like more is equal to better results, when it can have the total opposite effect, especially as women. Like, we have hormones that we need to keep in balance, and constantly increasing our output is just no doubt going to put so much stress on our bodies and our hormones, which then leads to our bodies feeling a lot more inflamed and just not being able to properly recover. So it's super important to make sure you're getting enough rest and recovery. I reduced my 5-day gym split to a 4-day gym split, because obviously I'm doing my running as well. I just find that is a lot more manageable, and I'm not putting as much stress, and my body just naturally wasn't as inflamed because I had more chance to recover and I didn't cling on to as much water retention. And just being able to listen to your body, especially like the week before your period and stuff, or those days that you're just feeling like hormonally a lot more kind of stressed, there's almost no point stretching yourself further when you're already kind of like at that stage. Like, it can be much more beneficial just to go for a walk on those days that you feel like you're just depleted and your body's giving you all the signs that you're tired and exhausted, and you might need to just get an extra early night as well. And that can go a lot further with your fat loss goal, should we say, because overtraining can really hinder your fat loss progress, and it can be uncomfortable at first when you're not used to taking rest days, but you'll quickly see the differences in not only your physique, but mentally you'll feel a lot fresher in your sessions too. Sixth is increasing your total day energy expenditure with a daily step goal, and being consistent with that, just to add. So if you're sedentary a lot of the time, or say if you do your workout in the morning and then you're kind of sat at your desk or you're working and whatnot, you're not really moving the rest of the day, that is going to be harder to achieve a fat loss goal, because your total day energy expenditure isn't super high, and especially if you're sedentary a lot of the time. So one way to speed things up and really get things moving is to improve your TDE. So a quick way to do that is to hit a consistent step goal. So for me, that has been between 10 and 13,000 steps a day, and I have to make a real conscious effort. Like, that's not easy, I don't think. To some people maybe it is. If you've got a dog, definitely easier, but increasing this is something that you can keep consistent, and also means that you can have sustainable fat loss results, rather than just say achieving a short quick fix. Maybe you're trying to lose fat for a holiday, but then you can't really maintain it, or you feel like whenever you have lost weight you've just pounded it back on and more, because you've not created these sustainable habits. And this is why things like walking is much more something that you can maintain, opposed to say if like you commit to doing 4 cardio sessions a week, and you just know like maybe 6 weeks of the year you could do that, but realistically, could you do that 365 days a year? Probably not. Whereas walking is a really beneficial habit, not only for your cardiovascular health but also for your mental health, because it's a time that you can walk with a podcast, you can fuel your mind, as well as you're getting your daily step count in, and it's not strenuous, it's low impact on your body and your joints, and it's something that you can do forever, which is why I just love walking. And again, with your, just like your macros, looking at your step goal as a weekly basis. Like, of course you're going to have some days that are busier and you're like, oh, I haven't managed to hit my 10,000 steps. You can like maybe add some more on. Say if on a weekend you have a bit more time, like just looking at it as a weekly step goal, and then breaking that down into what days like you have more time to do more steps, and getting things like a walking pad for your desk really makes a big difference. Final thing is not over complicating things. I feel like you've overcomplicated things, and you just needed this reminder to keep things simple, because the more you overcomplicate, the harder things feel. And obviously I know a calorie deficit and trying to lose fat can feel hard at times, but it doesn't need to be. You just need to keep reminding yourself, like, don't try and add too many strings and then make it something you can't maintain, because that's the thing with fat loss as well. You need to be in calorie deficit over an extended period of time to actually see results and to sustain results as well with a fat loss phase. So this is why just breaking things down and not trying to do a million things at once, and also you're not going to be as disheartened as quick if you feel like you're someone who just starts. Like, what's the bare minimum that you can start with and build from there. What I see overcomplicated a lot is things like meal timings, like, oh, should I intermittent fast? And basically a lot of these fasting approaches, or like, should I go keto? Can can you do that like all year round? Like realistically, probably not. Or you can do these things for short phases. Like it's much better to find an approach that's holistic, addresses every aspect of your life, and is something that you can actually maintain over time, because what's the point of just bouncing to and from different diets and then never really feeling like you can just maintain, and never having that trust in your body either, which is super important because that affects your whole self-esteem, how you show up as a person. And it is the basics that yield results. It's not the next new workout program or the next meal plan. It's about finding a flow that suits you in your lifestyle, that you actually have a full understanding of like how to get certain results, because there's nothing worse than say if you have achieved fat loss but you don't actually know how. So like then you're thinking, how can I maintain this? And that is why also I've created my Flowness Club, which is a community where I share my masterclass content. So this is video breakdowns taking you through how to calculate your macros, how to create your own workout program, and then I also provide you with my hybrid split that you can tailor to you and your lifestyle. And inside the community we've got daily accountability. So we're currently doing a challenge at the moment, a 30-day challenge where we check in on a daily basis. It's not easy, it is something you have to commit to, but I feel like fitness, you need that accountability and you need that community, because it can feel so isolating and lonely during your fitness journey, especially if you're starting out or if you're going back to it, which is why it's so important to share your journey and realize that you're not alone as well. So the links to the Flowness Club will be down below, and I would love to see you inside the community. There's also a free community that you can join too. But yeah, I really hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've found this helpful. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below, and I would love you to stick around by subscribing. Thank you again. I love you, I appreciate you, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.